Welcome once again to another edition of the Brattlecast, the podcast that is brought to you by the Brattle Bookshop in Boston, used and rare books, one of the most famous bookstores of its kind in the nation, if not the world. And we have with us, of course, Ken Gloss, the proprietor. I'm Jordan Rich. One of the things you say all the time, and if I ever do an impersonation of you on a stage, I would say, this is interesting, because you say the word interesting all the time, and you're fascinated and curious about everything. But let's talk a little bit about what you've noticed with people who have certain interests and how those interests can develop into, well, passions for collecting, things like that.
You know, Jordan, if only I was well known enough that people did do impressions of me, then I could collect impressions. I could collect impressions of me saying, this is interesting.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. You could sell it.
You'll be the first one.
Okay.
What happens is, one of the things that started this idea for this podcast is I have a daughter who lives in East Africa, in Nairobi, and every once in a while I get in something on East Africa. Most of the new material, and when I say new in my sense of it, the last 10, 20, 30 years, that's still current and modern and isn't as fascinating. But I just got in a book called Game Animals of East Africa. But the book was done in, this book was done in the 1960s. And inside the book was sort of a list that you could go and almost follow along when you went on the trip, and you could check off the animals you saw. And it has a wonderful, on the back side of it, a impression of an elephant put in. But let's see, what can you see? You can see a baboon, different kinds of monkeys, a bushbuck, whatever a bushbuck is. Someone saw 10 of them, by the way. Hyena. And actually, when I was in Africa with my daughter one time, we went on safari, and my wife and I absolutely decided the most terrifying animal we saw, it wasn't the tiger, it wasn't the lions, there aren't tigers, it wasn't the lions, it wasn't the elephants, it wasn't the rhinoceroses, it was the hyenas. We have no doubt the hyenas would get us every time. But I love, though, getting these items and then sending them to my daughter who lives there. And she loves the idea of basically back in colonial Africa in the early days. And again, early days might be 60s, 50s, how people looked at Africa, the impressions they had of the town. I have another book here that's actually even older, The Man-Eaters of the Tsavo, which is 1913. And it's basically about lions. And what I do now is I want to keep my daughter happy. And so whenever I see these older items, I sort of keep them aside. And actually sending them here's another offshoot, getting them to her in the mail to Kenya can be an expensive process, more valuable, more high priced than the books are. But
I'm not surprised.
The reason I love seeing these is I got a 1940s map of East Africa, and it sort of showed the animals you would see in certain areas, but it was sort of one of these very stylized maps. And she even framed it and has it hanging in her dining room. Normally, I would not have that much interest in East Africa. I've been there a number of times now, but it's basically the reason I like it is my daughter and grandchildren and her husband are there. They've been there 15 years. They plan on staying. So now, every time I go to a house, every time I go to an estate, every time I go to a book show, gee, do you have something on East Africa? And I'm not looking for the expensive stuff. In other words, I don't want the $10,000 book that's the rarest of the rare. I want the tourist map from the 50s or 40s or 30s. I want the book that somebody who was maybe going on a safari in 1960, how you would read that and look at that. And my daughter likes them, or at least she tells me she likes them. So it keeps me collecting them for her. And what she loves to do is, in many cases, her husband makes Swahili style furniture. And sort of to offset it, sometimes when they're taking pictures, they'll put some of this material near it. One of the things that I got her was a book on foreign service people back in, this was after World War One, what to do when you have to move to Africa, to East Africa and Kenya. And it sort of said, how do you cook? What type of food do you get? Who do you ask for? What to expect when you're there? And she says she just loves thumbing through that. Some of the things are very common and relate right to now. Some of the things are so old fashioned, outdated, actually probably when the colonial era was running the country, not as favorable. But she finds it fascinating looking back at this. It gives me something more to look for. And so that's one collection. I look for postcard, trade cards, maps, travel brochures, books for tourists, books for people moving to East Africa 50, 60, 70, 100 years old. We have one customer who collects Cuba, somewhat almost in the same way. Every Christmas, she calls us. I will give her credit. She's wonderful. It's been years, but she calls us a little before Thanksgiving and asks, "Is there anything on Cuba?" The reason she loves it is she was born in Cuba. When she was 6 years old, Castro took over. Her father was a doctor. They had to leave the country. When she came to this country, she didn't speak English at all. Again, she was 6 or 7. She's had a very, very distinguished, successful career, but she still has a lot of relatives in the United States who are a little bit older than she is, who remember pre-Castro Cuba. And they love getting gifts from her that might show the people, the places, what Cuba was like. Again, almost the same type of things I look for East Africa. If we were going to Cuba at the time, maybe the Hotel Nacional, what it looked like pre-Castro, what the beaches look like, the casinos, the music, the band, the dancing, or the coffee plantations, the fishing. And her relatives absolutely love seeing that type of material. Pre-Castro, they're specific. They don't want the Spanish-American War. They don't need that type of thing. But almost anything I can get that's under $100 range, even better, 10, 20, 30, I'm constantly looking out for it. And in both of these subjects, and I could mention customer after customer, a lot of my colleagues know that I'm looking for this type of thing on East Africa, or I'm looking for this type of thing in Cuba. I mean, very different places, very different perspectives, but they know if they get a postcard or if they get a small group of brochures or a few interesting books, they give me a call. I usually buy it, and then I'll just stockpile it so that I always have a gift for my daughter, or I have something to give this good friend and customer. And I could repeat this not only for East Africa, for Cuba, but maybe someone who moved out to California, someone who lives in Mexico. I have a cousin who lives in not Africa, who lives in Alaska. And I've now started putting aside little things, early things on Alaska, sort of traveling there at the turn of the last century. And, I get really interested too. It's because I'm looking for them, I start distinguishing what's more common, what's less common. And I'm going, especially some of these, boy, I like going there now. That was really tough country then.
Oh, yes, yes. And it points out, as we've discussed many times in the past, the importance in your line of work of networking And you've got a vast network of colleagues around the world who are looking out for you as well as your customer base. So, I mean, it really pays off for you and other customers.
Well, it absolutely does that. It gets me things that I like, enjoy, and it's really fun finding something for a customer that they might not have, or when they come in, you go, yeah, we've got a group of stuff and they can start going through it. They might only buy one or two things, but you've got something for them. And many times over the years, one of the great things about a small business like ours, and probably a lot of small businesses have been around, is you want to make your customers happy. They become colleagues, friends, stories. So all of that is ingratiating, even if you're not making a big amount of money. And sometimes I bought things that I know, there's no way they're going to buy this for more than I did, but they're going to be happy. And that's, for me, part of the joy. And then if you get them talking, they'll maybe tell what some of the stories their relatives have told, how things have changed, how they'd like to see things change again. It's all part of the fun of it. And in each one of these subjects, you learn a little bit about it at the same time.
And that's why sharing them on the Brattlecast is so much fun, because people around the world can get a taste of what it is you're doing and how much fun you're having. Ken, as always, we thank you and we wish your family in East Africa well.
Well, I thank you very much, but I wish everybody well, because no matter where you are, thank you.